Would you like to sit on the front? You can see my face. I can see yours. I think I was 15, 16. I was in Sunday school. And the teacher passed out paper and pencils to the people in the class and said, write down the 10 Commandments from memory as best you can. Gee, I don't know. I've been going to Sunday school all of my life. Church was just a block, short block. Vacation Bible school, 2 weeks in the summer every year. Church camp, 1 week every summer. Sunday school, every Sunday. We never missed in church. And we were Baptists, so we needed a lot of religion. So we went to church on a Sunday night. You know how Baptists are. You've got to have a lot of religion. I mean, I was in church all the time, right? Write down the 10 Commandments. Teacher said, as best you can. Well, I started out. What's the first one? I don't know what the first one is. But thou shalt not kill. I remembered that one. I wrote that one down. Oh, yes, thou shalt not commit adultery. Everybody knows that one. Now, I lied to my father the week before about the dent in the back of his brand new Oldsmobile. I said I didn't know anything about it. Which one is that? Oh, yeah. Thou shalt not bear false witness. Okay, now I've got 3 down, 7 to go. Well, you know, I surprised myself. I really didn't think I could do that well. I got 9. 9 out of 10. And I thought, well, that's all this religion is paying off, maybe, you know? But they were obviously not in order. They were all jumbled around, out of order. Well, on September 2nd, Labor Day Sunday, each of you will be required to stand in place and to repeat the 10 Commandments in perfect order. And if you don't, you will be put on Presbyterian probation. You see, I couldn't even have joined the church in the day, you know, back in the day when everybody knew the 10 Commandments. It was part of the breath, the life of the congregation. Everybody knew the 10 Commandments. In some churches, they put it on the wall. It was required in some churches, in the Church of England. Canon law required. Every church will have the 10 Commandments where everybody can see them on the wall. Well, every time you came in, you saw the commandments. In some churches, the Anglican Church, the priest would read the commandment every Sunday. And the people would say, Lord, have mercy. Then he would read the second commandment. The people would say, Lord, have mercy. The Lutherans would all recite the 10 Commandments before the prayer of confession every Sunday. Every Sunday. And then they would know what they were confessing. Now, the Presbyterians did one better. They would say the 10 Commandments after the prayer of confession. Sometimes they would sing them. So sort of to remind us what it is, how we're supposed to live now after we've confessed our sins. And in some churches, they had the 10 Commandments after the sermon, which I think is a good idea. If the sermon's not very good, at least you've got something to take with you for a Sunday lunch. I couldn't have joined the church. I only knew 9. And I didn't even know them in order. I suspect our Jewish cousins know the Ten Commandments better than we do. I suspect they do. They have an observant Jew would have a mezuzah on the door of the house. The mezuzah inside would be parchment, and it would remind people who they were. It would say, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart." And they would remember how that was given, how when Moses gave, in the book of Deuteronomy, how Moses gave them the commandments and that reading of the commandments. And he said to the people, make sure that they're on your heart. Impress them on your children. Think about them when you go to sleep. Think about them when you get up in the morning. Talk about them when you're at home and when you're on the road. Impress them upon your forehead. Wrap them around your hands. Put them on your doorpost. This marvelous gift. This marvelous gift of God. And so, an observant Jew, as he or she would go out the door every time, going out, coming in, you would touch or kiss the mezuzah. It would remind you of God. It would remind you who you are. It would remind you of the covenant and the blessing of God in your life. Every time you go out, every time you come in. Have we gone lukewarm on these commandments? I think part of the reason, part of our problem and challenge is we don't want to be legalists, you see. We don't want to be like those people in the New Testament that kept every bit of the law to every letter, but in doing so they overlooked the weightier matters: compassion, forgiveness, and love. We don't want to be like that. We don't want to be legal, so we sort of let the commandments slide. Oh, we're going to live in love. And you know, that's really true. If you live in love, if you live in perfect harmony, love God with all of your heart, if you love your neighbor as yourself, you don't need the Ten Commandments. And I want you to know that I love God with all of my heart. And I love my neighbor perfectly. About 5 minutes every day. And the other 23 hours and 55 minutes, I'm a mess. I mean, I drive up here from Shaler and I pass all of these beautiful homes, and some of them are so lovely with their landscape in the yard, and I see how large they are and how beautiful they are. And I covet. God, why did you give me a little house? I want one of these big houses. And then there's road rage. Now, I want you to know that when a man is behind me and tailgating me, that doesn't upset me nearly as much. And the reason it doesn't upset me is men are stupid behind the wheel of God. I accept that. I expect it. But when I'm tailgated by a woman, I go absolutely nuts. You know, if thoughts could kill, I've broken the 6th commandment a million times. This is just the beginning of my problems. I'm lustful, I'm mean, I'm irritable, I'm unforgiving. A about 23 hours and 55 minutes a day. You see, if we live in perfect love and perfect harmony with God and one another, we don't need the commandments. Jesus lived perfectly. Jesus was always in harmony with God, always appropriately loving with neighbor, always. But I've got news for you this morning. You're not Jesus. And neither am I. And so the commandments are a gift, a blessing. As the psalmist would say it in the very first psalm in the Old Testament, the law is the delight of my life. And those who keep the law are like trees planted by living streams, nourished always. Now, I know that the danger of the Ten Commandments is a sterile, mean legalism. And I know that we don't want that. I know that all of us know what it means to be judged by a legalist. Someone who is so intent on keeping the letter of the law and then judges everybody else because they don't come up to his or her standards. There is nothing uglier in the church. And there's nothing that has done more harm than people who are legalistic and mean and judgmental. Those folks drive people out the church door by the dozens. We don't want to be like that. We don't want to be a legalist, because legalism is death. Legalism is mean. And a legalist, if you really want to know the truth, doesn't love the law. A legalist loves himself and uses the law to judge and condemn other people. We don't want to be like that. But we need this gift appropriately and lovingly accepted, not as a tool, not as a weapon, but as a gift that shows us how we can keep covenant with God so that we can be God's joyful people. Luther called the law, the commandments, at one point, a sheepdog. Now, the sheepdog comes and finds the lost lamb. When we are lost, when we are confused. In almost every life I know, at some point in a person's life, they go into a deep, dark pit. They lose their bearings. They lose their soul. I imagine all of us are probably old enough that we know that's happened to us. It's happened to our friends and loved ones. Life kind of falls apart, and you do things and say things, and you fall into this dark place where you're no longer yourself anymore. The sheepdog comes, takes us home. Now, the sheepdog doesn't save us. The sheepdog takes us by the hand and leads us to the shepherd. The shepherd does the saving. You know the story of the prodigal son in the New Testament. This young man, takes the inheritance, goes into the far country, breaks every commandment that he knows to break, makes a complete mess out of his life. And then there's that verse that says, but when he came to himself. That's the beautiful part of that story. There was a moment in time when he had done all of that stuff, in which he came to himself. That's what the law, that's what the commandments do for us. They help us to realize what we've done. They help us to come to ourselves. When I was about 7 or 8 years old, my grandfather, the comedian, I talked about him last time, my grandfather, the comedian, and my father took me on a trip into the country to talk to a farmer. I have no idea what business they had with a farmer, but they let me go, and I was happy to go. And as we were standing out there in the field, and my father and grandfather were talking about something, the farmer looked at me and said, "Do you think that Tommy would like to go see whatever it was?" And my father said, "Oh yeah, I think he would. He would like to see that." There was a border collie there. And that border collie understood English as well as you do. That farmer told that border collie to take me out and to show me whatever it was that I don't remember what it was. And that dog came and gently put my hand in his mouth and led me out to where I wanted to see what it was. I've never seen anything like it in all my life. He even stayed on the inside so I couldn't fall into the pond. He led me by the hand where I needed to go. The law is our sheepdog. Takes us by the hand. He takes us home where we need to be. This morning, we all read the scripture together, the responsive reading, and you could almost laugh at the reading. Did you notice that when Moses, he wrote things down in a book, and he read the book to them and what they were supposed to do? These people had come out of slavery. They were slaves. They didn't have anything. They didn't know how to behave. They had no experience of anything. So they needed to be taught everything. And so Moses read to them out of the book how they were supposed to live, the commandments. Of course, the promise that you will have long life, you will have joy, you will be in a land of milk and honey. And this is how you're supposed to live. And the people all said, it was twice on the board, the people all said, "We will do everything the Lord commands. We will obey." They said it twice. And a few chapters later, when Moses has gone back up on the mountain, they gather all of the gold earrings from everyone, and they make a golden calf. And they lift it up and say, "This is your God, O Israel, that led us out of Egypt in bondage." And then the story says they sat down and ate and drank, and then they must have done some more drinking, because after that they all rose up and indulged themselves. Kind of sounds like us, doesn't it? They were good for about 5 minutes. Fortunately, the sheepdog kept coming. Generation after generation would never let them go. Kept coming again and again and again to take them home where they needed to be. Thank God for the gift of His marvelous commandments. They are a delight and a joy to our lives. And for 10 Sundays after today, we're going to walk through every one, so that you'll know them by heart. The word having been